Welcome to the LMS consistency portion of the KVET KDE Digital Learning Design Lab. Thank you for joining us. My name is Andrew Castle and I'll be facilitating this session. First thing I want to talk about really quickly is we're going to use, if you wish to use the Q&A and chat function within Zoom, that's perfectly fine, but I would ask that you use our back channel document. This will help us because we can actually use the questions and answers that are populated during the session, and we'll post this as a resource on our Design Lab site later. So we'll get a little more out of this. We'll get some more bang for our buck for this session. We'll also post the recordings of the day on that site as well. And I'll give you the link to that at the end here in a few minutes. And I'll show this link again, and somebody will put it in the chat box as well. Introducing our panelists, which I want to thank very much for agreeing to help out today. Dr. Sean Jackson with KDE Office of Education Technology, Brandon Blackburn from Pikeville Independent Schools, Jeff Coots from Jackson Independent Schools, and Mary Bell Stintler from Pike County Schools. Feel free at any time to ask any of the panelists questions, and if they're in the middle of a discussion or talking, that's fine. We'll back up later and answer those questions. We'll have some time at the end. Now, don't panic. I know this is a lot for a screen, but I just wanted to share quickly the broad questions and talking points that all the panelists sort of looked at before and that they'll touch on based upon their individual experiences. If some of them will venture off some of these questions because of what they know and what's been happening in their district or according to their role. But this slide deck will be on the resource site later as well, so you can refer back to it. Again, please use the back channel, and I've spoken long enough because we want to hear, again, Sean Jackson from KDE, and thank you for joining us.
Well, so first off, thanks for putting this together. Again, I know everybody's really highlighted how beneficial this is, and you know it's our intent not to drive the conversation, but rather just help enhance the conversation. And so as we've been moving through these different sessions today, you know, the choosing of an LMS across the board and to be consistent across a school district is that second component into success. And just from our perspective, the access at home, that's one of the most important pieces. And it's that three-legged stool, having the device, having the internet in the student's home and digital content. And from our school district's perspective, in what they've presented to us in the annual reporting and through our digital readiness survey every October, in October of 2019, and we're really just focused on households with students in them. It's somewhere between 84 and 91% of those households have internet access in the home, and that includes both the traditional broadband aspect and Wi-Fi and cellular connectivity. And so that's that first element, and choosing the good LMS is just the next component in that one of the 4 digital strategies. And so it's really important that we get our students and our parents on the same page and help them have success in helping their kids when they can't be in school, or if they've chosen an all digital option. And just kind of going over that lead in and everything, I want to just turn it over to anybody else that might have something to just kind of kick us off.
I just want to say thank you for leading us in there, and I love this conversation, and I'm really excited to take part in it. And man, we got a great panel, so I just wanted to really just give a mic check there and a shout out that this is an exciting thing.
And just to jump on what Brandon said, you know, this is a big thing that all districts in the state of Kentucky need to look at. I mean, with what we're in right now with COVID-19, we need some type of management system that is going to be feasible, but at the same time effective, because we want to continue their education no matter what we're thrown. So again, this is, to me, this is a major player when it comes to thinking about how we approach digital learning with our students during this time of crisis.
And what a cool evolution we've experienced. I can remember getting into teaching, and it was like, make sure you do your teacher webpage, right? And you know, everybody was like, can we put information on the teacher webpage? And that was kind of like the communication hub for parents and students. And you know, we saw people do some pretty cool things with that. But now we have this this resource where it's this one-stop shop that can really be tailored to a district's need. And it's just really cool to see that we have evolved over the last decade. And now we're going from, you know, teacher websites to trying to pick the right form of the evolution now. It's just incredible what we're experiencing right now.
And I'm glad that you bring up the teacher webpage aspect of it, Brandon, because, you know, we've been, before these traditional LMS strategies came out, and, you know, we've really identified 3 of those at the Kentucky Department of Education, you know, as being kind of pervasive in the school ecosystem here in Kentucky. Those are Google Classroom, Edgenuity, and Schoology. And those are kind of the 3 front runners. But we have, because, you know, Kentucky has been a front runner in school internet, we were the first, okay, providing high-speed internet to every school district in our state. And so because of that, we've seen a lot of teachers over the years design and implement strategies that behaved kind of like a learning management system, but weren't traditionally what we define as a learning management system in what we know today. And so as the evolution has happened in our state, as we've been able to increase the number of devices in student hands, and as we've seen in-home internet, whether it's broadband, whether it's a wireless solution, whatever, we've been able to still stay connected with students and parents outside of the classroom. And so that's a really cool development that you bring up, that we've been using websites that behave somewhat like a learning management system in the past, or our intent is just to get the content out there to people when they need it most. And so, yes, this provides a great opportunity, this discussion especially, into looking at, okay, across school districts now, what are we seeing at the elementary, middle, and high school levels, so that we can make a consistent effort to keep students and parents on the same page. And so one question I have for the other panelists, this really goes along with it. I just came out of the school district very recently, and so I don't know that we intentionally did it. We had elements built in where we knew this data, but how many of you others, Brandon and anybody on the panel, Jeff, or now I'm losing, and Mary, sorry. How many of you have looked at what multi-student households we have? What percentage of your households are multiple student households?
I can't really speak to the exact number, but I mean, if you're, you know, we're a relatively small district, but I mean, it's a good percentage. It's a really good percentage of having multi-student households. And one of the things that we ran into almost immediately upon surveying our folks when looking at reopening the schools and our plan going forward was that you never get households that have students in the same place. And so you have, you know, students that are in this high school experience and this junior high experience, this elementary school experience. And it becomes very difficult to come up with a solution that tailors the needs of all these folks. So one example that we've discovered just recently is that, and again, going to the evolution, here we go from teacher websites to just being thankful that there's an LMS, we're a Schoology house. But now we have fragmented that out a little bit, and now we are K through 1 seesaw. and then we're Google Classroom up to the 8th grade, and then we're Schoology 9 through 12, which is a more similar college online experience that we create, because we were very grateful to have an LMS with Google Classroom and Schoology, but now we're getting to creating an experience that is more effective based on where the students are in their education career. And so that was an interesting challenge and a response, and I'm very proud of our district for looking at that granularly, and just saying, we have some households that have 5-6 kids in 3 different places, and you have households that where students live in 2 different places depending on their situation with their guardianship, and there's all kinds of interesting challenges when you consider how do we learn at home, when home can be something that's a moving target.
And I'll jump just right what you said, Brandon. I mean, you've got to look at different zones in this case. And, elementary, which K1, I'm also looking to Seesaw for kids. We do use Google Classroom, but we're also working with like HTTC and stuff, where we actually have Blackboard. They're actually getting ready to be trained on that here. I think it's this week or next week. And we didn't have to purchase Blackboard for the dual credit, but at the same time, it is a springboard. And even though I love Google Classroom, it is not what a Blackboard is, but it is a springboard for those students actually to understand what is required of them and how to function inside that environment. So I think that is major for those students. Same thing with Seesaw. It's a focus area is more the kindergarten, 1st grade, but it's a transition too. So I'll throw another thing out there, and this is just something that I'm working on right now just for classroom for our district, is that one of the biggest issues that from NTI, because we've been in NTI for a while, and with last year's big curveball, is that when parents went home and kids even had devices, there were issues. Mom and dad had hard times trying to follow through with what's going on. When we're looking at Google Classroom, they didn't understand that. So what I'm trying to do right now is develop a primer for our parents, especially those in K through 5, because number one, they need to understand how to work with their students, because that's a major thing that we need to make sure that when they go home, they don't lose that functionality in their mind because, oh, I can't do this. Don't let the tech interfere. Have resources available for those parents so that it becomes more streamlined and it's easy to use. And for us, we're also getting ready to start school year back in person. So we have the blended type. So you may be here or you may be home, but our big goal is to basically teach our students to become more virtual learners just in case, hey, we get kicked off and back into this NTI situation where we're at home. So, I mean, we need to make sure all those players are in place. And the final thing I'll throw out, of course, is our teachers. Our teachers, everything's changed. Last year, it was a curveball. They went directions here and there. But I think you need to stay on a plan, a more focused plan, and build that inside those learning management systems. And if I was looking at Google across the board, then I would work with every level so that it basically helps step the students up in different areas. And so again, like anything else, I'm looking at building types of digital curriculum. So if they're asynchronous or synchronous, no matter what, our teachers and students and parents all together can work together to help our students achieve. So, but that's mine. Sorry, talked a long time.
No, that's perfect. That's great. Thanks for that.
And I think we in Pike County are facing many of the same challenges. We have a large percentage of households that have multiple students. And then even if the teachers are working in the household, you have the teacher that's online and working digitally, plus the students that are there. We're trying to move to the LMS as more of a consistency module. And there's a lot of trepidation on all parts in making that transition. So we're trying to use the word that we're transitioning into that type of learning, because we have a lot that use Google Classroom and they feel like Google Classroom is a learning management system in itself. And so we're, as much as we're trying to teach the students and train the teachers, there's a lot of cultural shift in the process of kind of making them understand what the purpose is of that. You talk about coming a long ways. I've been at this long enough to where I remember the first Apple computer that was in our building, and we were looking up the word font because we had never heard the term, and everything was on a floppy disk. And everyone approaches it at different levels, and so we, from our perspective, we want to try to get as much consistency throughout the district, and to help our teachers feel at ease using the LMS system. And we are trying to emphasize that it's not just for the virtual learning, that this is something that we're going to be able to use as a classroom strategy and tool long after COVID goes away. And so we're trying to embrace it as a way of life.
Right. And you bring up a great topic about, multiple student households. And that's why it's so key that we have as much consistency across the board as possible. And I understand, we've got the dual credit factor in there that does kind of change the game for some students. And we've got some other needs out there. But when you start evaluating a learning management system, yeah, that's just the definition for that we're going with is the software for the administration, documentation, tracking, reporting, and delivery of digital educational materials. And so if you look at a Google Classroom, I think Jeff brought it up, Google Classroom doesn't want to fit all of those elements. It wants to just be that connectivity piece. And that's fine. Google has made no qualms about that. But it meets and holds most of the requirements that we would traditionally need in a learning management system. And so a learning management system is just, how do I administer, document, track, report student learning, and deliver educational materials to them? And for most people's purposes, Google Classroom does just that. So from my perspective, coming from the district administration side and being in the classroom, it was infinitely easier to talk to my students when they went from one class to another and got on the exact same platform. And whatever scheme that is for you, it matches. But also from a district administrator and a parent's perspective, I've got 3 daughters. Okay. If my elementary school student, she had teachers saying, get on Zoom. I had my middle school student may have been trying to get on Google Meet, or somebody else was using, another platform. These are all conversations that factor into those LMS consistency conversations to make it easy for parents and students to help those multiple student households. And so again, I'm not trying to bogart the conversation, but I appreciate that you guys are all thinking in that manner, because that's how I had to think as a district administrator. And I think that's how we all have to think when we're trying to implement these strategies. What's the as far as, shifting gears and changing to complete online non-traditional instruction, my main concern was, can students get the content, connect with the teachers, and then deliver those things back? What types of things do you see as the primary concern when you choose a learning management system?
I just want to look at every facet that we possibly can, and I want to get as much buy-in as we possibly can. That way we can hopefully start fires and those spread. When we went through choosing Schoology, we brought, our teachers in, we brought parents in, we brought students in, so we had a lot of input, and it took several months actually to create that, that streamline of information and input from multiple folks. And that's changed over time, obviously, because we were Schoology K through 12, and then we split into Google Classroom, and now we split into thirds. Now we may be moving more Google Classroom from Schoology, don't know yet, but as of right now, we're in we're in 3 different offerings. But because the communication and the consistency is so important, because, you know, we had a lot of people choosing their own directions last year when we were in the NTI scramble, because, you know, here we had a lot of Schoology users, but we had teachers that really didn't use a lot of anything. So they're like, well, what can I get into as quickly and easily as possible? And so they went into a classroom. And so, you know, we had a lot of parent concerns and student concerns, just like you said, oh, I'm going into a Google Meet, I'm going to Microsoft Teams, I'm going to a Zoom, and that caused a lot of problems. So we are all on now one page, even though we're doing 3 different LMSs. We did something a little extra on that. We have purchased Remind K through 12. So this is kind of our communication, you know, district-wide solution that sits hopefully on the front end of, you know, communicating with folks where to go, where to find things, because Remind integrates with all of our LMSs. So we have a single communication source, even though there's 3 LMSs behind it. So, you know, can you use just one LMS? I saw that on the slide deck. Yeah, there, absolutely. Are we going to eventually move to one LMS? Possibly, but right now, it's all about the teacher buy-in, the student efficiency that we can, you know, promote learning. And we also want to hear the voices of our parents and making sure that we're all connected in some way. So that's something that we did that's maybe a little bit different.
I think if I can chime in quickly, Brandon, that's a good lead in. Pike County just went through the process of choosing a district-wide LMS, if I'm not mistaken. And Mary Beth can probably talk about that for a few minutes, because it was a pretty big process for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're still a little nervous about the whole process because we're just in the beginning stages of rolling it out and implementing that. So what we did, we had meetings with Schoology, Blackboard, and Canvas, and they gave us their presentations. And then we had our administrators take that back to teachers and have discussions with them. And so as we vetted those out and you know, answered different questions, we had a rubric that we were looking for some consistent things that each of the LMS systems would offer. And then we have made the decision to go with Canvas, and we will be starting that rollout. And as I said, we're using the approach, we're transitioning in to the use of Canvas, because we understand this is going to be a massive mind shift and a lot of undertaking. And with the COVID situation going on, we want it to be a positive experience for everyone. So we are in the infancy stage of the whole process, but it's a little nerve-wracking as a district to make that choice and to move in that direction. But we do think that the benefits are going to outweigh the restrictions and the problems that we'll have. And it's just about the approach that we take. And we want to do what's best for our students and our teachers to get that consistency across the board and to be more effective, because now where NTI days were before just used for short-term purposes and a continuation of learning, it's more important now than ever to make that virtual learning as realistic to the face-to-face. And so we felt like we had no other choice but to move in that direction.
And let me throw another thing in here that I don't know if you all looked at. We also, I mean, we come from a small district. You know, funding is major in small districts, and cost being a major, another deciding fact too. And the also familiarity to it. We as a district decided, and Laura may be able to throw when she came down, but it's been 4 or 5 years ago, I'm assuming, and we made the decision to, hey, make all our teachers Google certified or get them to that certification level. And then it paid off. When we got through the, you know, the NTI COVID-19, I mean, truthfully, our teachers were already using Classroom for students. Students were using them with their Chromebooks. And there's another thing. We have all these Google Chromebooks out there, and that was it's easier to basically sync those things in. But the teacher buy-in and then teaching the students, and they saw the need. And I throw this one out to all the teachers and stuff that said, oh, I won't do Google. I'd rather stay the way I was. I had an English teacher, and she said, I cannot stand to think about using computers and all this. And when I basically urged her to do it just for a couple of weeks, she said, and it came to this way. She just said it. She says, "I'm stupid. I should have listened to you. This tool is wonderful because I can communicate. I can look at my students' work while they're working 24/7, give them feedback quicker than waiting weeks after I have all the papers." But these are tools inside these LMSs that really help. With Google, and not everything's built into it, but you can add extensions in it, and it makes it so much more powerful. So you take this place where we all meet, and now we can add pieces to it that are basically needs that I need. I mean, I look at it, for instance, and this is a big one. If I'm going to communicate with my students, Google Calendar, great, it's out there, but we can also make appointment slots in there for parent conferences or student conferences. And we can add that into the system. Google Hangout. I mean, you can put a link instantly. It's on the main page of your classroom. So there's a whole bunch of things that you can do inside that tool or add to that tool that makes it more effective and more powerful. That's why it's important to say, you know, the LMS, in this case, Classroom is it, but having those other tools that filter into it make it more powerful. So that's, you know, that to me, that's one of the things that we did look at. Cost was big because, you know, with Classroom, we really don't have any issues with it. Google Voice, love to have that added into it, but there is a cost to that. But is it worth it? You know, that would come down to it. I can get a Google Voice right now on my personal account, and it does the same thing. So there's workarounds, but I will preach this to the, I guess, to whenever. I would, in any district, have a Google certified trainer because you get so many resources that we don't see that are out there. And especially with this issue we're dealing with now, but it all centers around Classroom. So again, that's, you know, there's a lot there, but cost was an issue, but familiarity and teacher buy-in and student buy-in. So it was a major for us in those areas.
Jeff, when you say Google certified trainer, I assume you mean in every district, regardless of whether they have chosen Google Classroom as their platform or not.
Yeah, I would, because I know that we have the digital learning coaches, I think, that are going out right now, and that's going to be a major play. And if I was Laura, I would have every one of those guys become trainers because you get more, there's a lot more hidden than just having that little bitty thing that says, hey, I'm certified 1, 2. I mean, you talk to individuals, how they do things, but there's also freebies and stuff too that you get that just because you're Google 1 and 2 doesn't mean you get. So it is major for them in a district to be that way, but it's the information and the connections. It really is great.
Going back to Mary just for a second, and Pike County's experience, you know, there's a reason. I know one size does not fit all. You know, there's a reason that KDE doesn't say all districts shall use, you know, one LMS to rule them all, because different localities have different needs. But I'll ask Mary this one, with Google Classroom being one of the most popular ones presently, can you share, and I don't want to put you on the spot too much, can you share some of the reasons and the thoughts that you all had in Pike County that led you to choose something other than Google Classroom? Because that might be important for some folks to hear.
It was important to us to kind of have that consistency in the housing and to have a resource for some of the teachers that maybe had not embraced Google and give them a resource to use. And one of the important things that we looked at when we were choosing Canvas was its ability to communicate with Google. So all the work that the teachers have been using is not going to be lost. They're still going to be able to incorporate and use that. We certainly have a lot of differentiation in our district with 18 schools. We have 18 schools with multiple teachers at different levels and using various methods of communicating with their parents and with their students. So we have also been working towards Google certification with our teachers as well. So we try to have a blended a blended offering for the teachers to use what they feel comfortable with, but we still felt like everyone wasn't using Google, and so that we needed another system in place for our teachers that maybe wasn't embracing Google would have another resource available to them, and it still goes back to some of that consistency, because we have so many teachers and so many students that we just wasn't seeing a way of reaching out to everyone and kind of putting everyone on somewhat of a similar page, but yet being uniquely different. And we felt like that moving to an LMS system was the best way to do this at that time.
Just a couple of
Yeah,
comments.
go ahead, Brandon.
Sorry. If we were to have went through the process that we went through years ago when we chose Schoology today, I would almost guarantee that we would have picked Canvas. And I want to share one of the reasons why. When we were looking at this, and I talked about a lot of the people that we brought in to those presentations, we also spoke to a lot of our state colleges and universities and tried to discover what they were using. And at the time, they were also at that point to where they were at the end of their Blackboard contracts. A lot of them were. I don't know if they all jumped on the bandwagon at the same time, and they were ending at that same time. But a lot of them were, kind of vetting that out and looking at. A lot of people were leaning towards Schoology at that time, 5-6 years ago. And so that really brought, into our decision making that we were trying to generate that consistency, that when they left Pikeville Independent and they started interacting with their professors online, maybe even totally online, that they would see something very similar from when they left high school to when they got to the universities. Now, the reason I say we'd probably pick Canvas today is because if you look at a lot of the universities like UK, and I think even UPike now, I'd have to double check on that, they all went Canvas. And so that is an added layer to that consistency that we can consider. The other comment I want to say is something that Jeff kind of brought up about, that teacher story. We had a teacher that was a part of our vetting committee, and she was just like really hesitant. She was an English teacher, and she was like, I like my books, I like my paper, I like all those things. And she had all these fantastic reasons why that was important, and maybe an LMS could negatively impact learning. And she is one of the best teachers in our state. I'm telling you, she's just incredible. And she finally bought into it because she's just a great sport. That's just the type of person she is. And I remember she was in the top 5 out of our printer users, because we track and report that every single year. And she doesn't even show up on the list now. Schoology even heard about that in one of our follow-up calls, and they paid for her to come to the Schoology conference, the national conference, to come and speak about how she went from a teacher who fought for one direction, entertained the idea and went a different direction. And so to add to how to make this work in your district, I wasn't doing Flex PD anymore because I'm the district technology coordinator, one of 2 of them. And I'm just going to say those things, it's like when the preacher invites you to church, it maybe doesn't mean as much because that's his job. But, now that teacher was the person that was selling the LMS, and everybody listened, and that is a huge point to make your LMS go, is getting teachers that the other teachers trust and believe in, and they share their stories, and that's major.
One of the things about the Canvas
for
us was the fact that UPike was actually using Canvas. And to us, when the people were thinking of Blackboard, it went back to college, and it was more institutional and not child-friendly. And one of the things that Canvas had that intrigued us and kind of drew us to that was the site for the early primary and the way that was set up, and it would get the attention and the ease of use. And then the resources and the third-party agencies that it connects out to is going to reach out, and we think will be a benefit for us as well.
Yeah, and right now, from the most recent data that we have, 86% of our school districts say that they have a district-wide learning management system strategy, but 46% of those report that they do use more than one. And that's a multi-layered reasoning behind that, okay? Maybe your upper level students need something a little bit different. We heard the reason about dual credit requiring something, so they wanted to be consistent across the board. But one of the chief reasons why I originally took Mason County in the direction of Google Classroom was because it was free. Okay. In 2015, I set up our Google domain and I started testing it out and using it. Other teachers saw what I was doing and wanted to know why I chose that. And, you know, I was able to, and I was in a unique position as an administrator and, you know, being a student or being a teacher of students still as well, to be able to see the benefits firsthand. But one of the key things that I did not get done, and this is a lack on my part, and I'd love to hear what other people have done, is bring up a consistent way for people to communicate. I mean, I've got elementary teachers that are doing Remind. I've got elementary teachers that are doing Class Dojo, I did. And, you know, it's kind of all over the board. And even with my daughters, one classroom teacher used Remind, the other one used Class Dojo, and that's all they used to communicate. And bringing up that consistent avenue for communication goes hand in hand with this learning management system conversation because of the aspect of progress monitoring and tracking. But also, I would be interested to hear how you have or how you plan to onboard parents in how these learning management systems work. And if that's not part of the conversation yet, I think that it eventually should be, because I don't think we see a good answer to how do we help parents become familiar with the platforms that their students are using. And but I think that's a key component to this whole conversation. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
And before anyone answers, I want to quickly jump in and say, I also feel it's really important. As a parent, I especially in the situation we find ourselves in now, I kind of want to have access to what my kids are doing. You know, they're not going to be bringing home their homework per se. They're going to be doing it. I want to have a way to check in on them. And with using LMS, that might be a little more difficult than, you know, traditional learning. So I think school districts should be thinking about how to onboard parents to their LMS access in some way. So yeah, if you all could speak to that and how you might be doing it, that would be fantastic.
Our plan is once that the teachers become a little more familiar with it and they move forward and the students become familiar with it, is as part of our virtual back to school open classrooms and open houses that we'll be doing would be to offer sessions for the parents and question and answers for them. We hope to create some tutorial videos and some little cute videos that's just like public service announcements that would make it a positive experience and bring them on board with that. I think that once we get our teachers familiar with it, then we can kind of move towards, bringing the parents a little bit more on board with it. But I think we've got to make it seem very positive and bring it to the parents level, because most of the parents won't be approaching so from the ability to be technical. And so we've got to keep that in mind, that all parents don't have the same technology skills. So we've got to make it as simple as possible for them and make them believe, hey, you know, we can do this as well.
Just to jump on back what I said earlier, I think creating a type of video training in the situation we're in right now is a must. Give you just a little plan of what I'm actually getting ready to do. For instance, what does the student see and what does the teacher see? I think it's actually important that the parent also understands what happens when a student actually submits an activity. And so they can actually come in and actually see that, hey, that activity went instantly, and that teacher actually can see it quickly and respond to it. So I think there's a lot of things when we start building resources that we want to make it to the point that it's easy to understand, but from two different viewpoints. They have to understand what the teacher actually is seeing at the same time. And so the way that I plan to do that, of course, I've already set up a classroom, a test classroom, and also set up a student that is not one of our students, but I can do incognito window, and I can do both views at once and show them what consistency goes on. So if I post something in the stream, this is what the student sees. This is the way that they can actually collaborate if you want to give them those commenting possibilities. What happens if you're given an assignment? How do you turn that in? Because even as a student, and when we were doing the training with our teachers, that's how we train them. They trained as students before they trained as teachers. And I think that gives the parent the same ideal that this is how the system works to help both people. The other thing, of course, that there's email based that can be sent out. I think it's weekly in classroom to the parent about activities that are going on with their student. And of course, we have Infinite Campus. That's big because that's their main system of all things that go on. And then, as Brandon said, remind. I think that's for us. We want to be consistent about making announcements and things that push out. And so that becomes helpful and being consistent. But helping those parents understand what their students are being asked to do is major. And that is at different levels. So working maybe with the elementary, creating one primer there. Middle school, even though we talk about middle and high because those students are more adept at using it, mom and dad still needs to understand the processes that go on and keep it short and sweet. You want to make sure those parents understand, but then also give them some like back channel so they can ask questions and stuff. So that's one thing. The other option is to invite them into a big Google Classroom. Of course, that becomes the district admin opening that up and providing that code out. And that may be some security issues that districts don't want to jump into. But there are possibilities that parents then could see the same thing that the students are seeing. I mean, it'd be great. Hey, here's a flyer that comes out and it posted to that. And you know, the good thing about Google, all devices, you can pick it up. So that is a major thing. So my 2 cents.
Yeah, we handle a lot of this usually during open houses because we're a small district, and that's kind of the luxury of being a small district is, you know, you can accomplish a whole lot in just a couple of different sessions. But one thing that Mr. Arnett and I did this year with NTI is that we essentially created this central hub on our website that was that it could be selected that, hey, I'm a teacher, I'm a student, or I'm a parent. And there were self-created videos. There was, and like Jess said, I mean, you've got to keep it short, sweet, very, you know, minimum a number of clicks to get down into something. And so we're going to do much better about that this year going forward. Well, one, because we have to, but also, you know, we want to take all the little silver linings we can from this forward with us as well into being better. But, you know, we're going to talk about a lot of things about technical support. And, you know, we have a system that's in place for teachers to open up help desk tickets. But, you know, with Google Forms and things like that, we have a lot of different avenues and opportunities. But as of right now, without our in-person open house, you know, we probably won't be able to take phone calls and text messages like we do. I mean, like I said, we're a small town, so it's easy for teachers and parents and us and to text back and forth, and it's not really intrusive or invasive or, you know, inconvenient. But given the situation, you start doing that, you open up a can of worms. So we got to make sure that we create a singular, streamlined source of way people can, you know, seek help. And I'm really curious to see what other people do. We've got some ideas, but I hope to find out from others and learn from others how to do that the best that we can.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate, you know, there's one question, what mistakes were made during implementation when we implemented a strategy for Google Classroom. And I was trying to lead that. I did not do a good job on this. And that was one pressure point during the whole, NTI shutdown in the spring, was that we have to build these immediately. And that's how we did it. We tried to mitigate with videos posted to YouTube, linked from the district website, things like that. But it was just a Band-Aid solution. Moving forward, what the plan is in that district now is to do these types of intentional front-loaded information, have those available, and to be on-demand training type opportunities for parents and even for students. And another thing that I've heard a lot of districts do, and I think this is a great idea, is they've now paired with, there is a Kentucky course code that deals with the help desk and things like that. And we had students doing a help desk, manning a help desk physically in the school every single day at the high school. And a lot of districts who were doing that or are still planning to do that, but now it's going to be a virtual help desk. So students, parents, and teachers are going to be emailing or messaging this central location, and it's going to be students. And that is that's a huge part of our STLP process, and students being technology leaders in their districts. So as you develop your plans, that might be something to think of. If you already have that infrastructure for a help desk type system, put your kids in charge of that. And I know we're going to talk about that more in the people side discussion panel, but I think that it also factors into this conversation of how do we train and how do we help people get accustomed to these learning management system solutions that we're implementing.
Thanks. If I could switch gears, because we only have a few minutes left before we should take some questions. We have a lot of districts who still have not implemented a school-wide or district-wide learning management system in that process. Can each of you talk for just a moment about mistakes that either you made or you watched others make as they did implement, as you or others implemented an LMS? What roadblocks and mistakes can you sort of advise others to try to avoid as they choose an LMS and start implementing that LMS?
Well, we just got overambitious. I think some folks touched on this earlier. A lot of your LMSs have integrations. And so when we started presenting the idea of an LMS, people immediately started saying, well, I wonder if it works with tool 1, 2, 3 that I use. And so when you look at all the different departments and all the different tools that they use, and, we have a small IT group here, everybody from kindergarten to 12th grade was sending us lists of tools saying, oh, I found out that Schoology integrates with this tool and this tool and this tool. And, we were just trying to get Infinite Campus just working with Schoology, and here's this long list of tools. And so we were excited. And so we were trying to do all of that. So we were building every floor of the skyscraper at one time, and that's just not possible. You got to start at the ground floor and work your way up. So it is exciting, and you want to meet all the needs. So, I think it's just important to have the communications and the discussions and conversations early on of what we want to try to get working first, and make sure that you do those well, and also devise a good plan for rolling that out, because we saw a lot of really good buy-in early on, and that was exciting as well. And it was real easy for that to guise the folks and allow the folks to hide that didn't want to buy in so quickly, because we didn't have a middle ground. We had folks that wanted to go 100 miles an hour, and then some people that wanted to go hide in their cabinets. And so that's really the couple of things that I would say that we struggle with the most is, one, we were over ambitious, and two, we took off running with the folks that wanted to run, and we maybe left behind the folks that ran into the stands and away from the starting line. So that's two things that I think are difficult. Now, we could talk about some of the technical hurdles all day, but overall, to me, it's most important to make sure that you do the best for the people. And it's real easy to overlook the people side of tech, depending on how the response is to your product.
And I think that's been one of the things in our district, because time is such a precious commodity, and there's such a sense of urgency to make all of this happen, and make it happen now, and not only make it happen now, but make it happen now in a proficient and distinguished way. And so it's really difficult to remain patient, and I think it's really essential that you give yourself enough time to properly plan, like you said, Mr. Blackwood, because I think the success of your program will depend upon that. And one of the things that we're doing, we have leads in each of the buildings based on the size of the staff. So some may only have one lead, but some may have as many as 5 leads in their building. And there's the trainer kind of like module to where that they can be there to support as well, in addition to the support that our technology department and our instructional literacy coaches are also going to be providing. Because teachers do learn from teachers, but I think the patience and thinking that plan well out before you start to implement it is key to the success of the program.
Yeah, having a well thought out plan is major. Also thinking about issues that may pop up. For instance, like Brandon, you said, some of these teachers will jump ahead and they can do things that others can't, and then other teachers will look at them and say, well, I wish I could do that. Try to, in my opinion, try to strategically add features throughout and also provide trainings. I think when we started out with Laura, we had 2 teachers. We got those Google certified. They become teacher leaders in our district. You know, just like I said, the digital learning coaches, it's going to be a great thing for those districts. And then using those teachers as leaders, we started working with, in this case, Classroom. And then, of course, we had Word, or in this, Docs and so forth, and then trying to integrate those. What were the major functionalities that we could integrate into it that would have some major impact, and also have those teachers start talking? But then you also had those ones that said, hey, I can do this. And then what we did was, instead of just that teacher being, oh, I can do this, and all those teachers coming whenever they could, we actually turned that into a teacher learning session during maybe a PLC or during a training, and that way they could share it. That also gave that teacher that uplift, hey, I'm important here, and buying into the product itself. And then again, we had more and more, and so that's how we build up our system from within. The issues, of course, I'm only one technical person. Don't let it be on my shoulders to train every person and everything. And I think most people in all districts think just because you have that DTC, CIO, STC thing, you can do it all. Well, unfortunately, you can't. But you can find someone that can help, or you can work with others in your own district and work through that end goal. So that's one of the things that I would think, because a lot of teachers would say, hey, this is going to do this, and this is going to do this. It's not the end of all. Just like any product we buy, there's going to be things that we have to sit down and learn about it. Is there anything that we can connect? And just like you said, we're only one person on the tech side, or 2 or whatever, and we can only do that small piece. But with that, though, being said, there's a lot of people going to be trained in our, in our own state that will be those resources that, we can lean back on now. And I mean, I just think it's so great. YouTube, greatest thing in the world. I mean, we have so many resources out there, but that's me saying that.
I agree with you, Jeff, and I'm actually with the Department of Instruction, but our whole process has been a joint effort through our technology department. And I can't see how one could do it without the other.
Oh, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because, if our technology leaders in districts are not also seen as instructional leaders, then, that's a huge gap, because every technology decision that's happening right now is also an instructional decision. They all factor into how instruction is happening. And so I'm so glad you brought that up. And yes, we've been in the districts and we've been expected to fix printers and copiers and reset passwords. And that's what people think that we're supposed to do. And then also make everything magically work. And it's impossible to do alone. That's why these digital learning coaches, through a stipend, through full-time, through, whatever position, that's why they're so crucial, and why KDE is really pushing that program forward. But one of the biggest mistakes, besides not training parents, that I think I made initially was our elementary schools, they said our kids are too young to remember passwords, so we don't want to use Google Classroom. And I was told at the time, okay, they made the decision. That's fine. Well, guess what? When COVID-19 shut everything down, they didn't know how to log into Google Class or Google. They didn't know how to check their email. They didn't know how to do any of these things. And so they're saying, we don't know how to do this, so we can't do this. And that was a huge problem. We should not have, at the district and admin level, we should have not accepted that. At the time, we should have pushed harder. And, that's, hindsight's 2020. Nobody expected this to happen this spring, but if we had done at those schools what we had done at the other two, a year and a half before, we would have been in a much better position to equip our students for success, and we would have avoided the paper packet mentality that we were stuck in. But again, I think all of us were stuck in the NTI sprint mentality. Hey, we've got a couple of snow days. We just need to get to being in person again. And we were not ready for the marathon. And all this summer has basically, we've all been training for a marathon of virtual learning, and in some way, shape, or form. So this has been a testament to, I think, all Kentucky teachers and administrators and everybody who's been focused on these issues. And let's pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and let's get the job done for the fall. And we'll see what else happens. But this panel has been great. So many heavy hitters on here. Thank you for allowing me to be on here. I won't talk anymore. I know we're running out of time.
Yeah, we're coming up against a hard stop on our time limit, and I guess that sort of precludes the Q&A part we wanted to have at the end here. But I would ask if the four panelists would in the next few minutes jump over to the back channel, and if you choose to, share your email address so that folks can send you questions later, or even better, just use the back channel. That'll be a living document. We'll keep it alive so folks can ask questions there if you choose to monitor it a little bit. I do want to thank all four of you for contributing. This was very useful to me, and I know it'll be useful to a lot of our districts and schools that are still thinking about settling on an LMS and making that decision. And also, I do want to point out that this we all know this is only the beginning of the conversation. The real work with this happens at the districts and schools as they explore these questions. And this panel discussion, as well as this whole day, serves as a launch conversation to get this process started. I do want to ask, as everyone does this, as you folks, our districts, our schools, start doing this work, turn on your maker side and share what you're doing on the Digital Design Lab website, which I'll share right now, theholler.org/design lab. It is live, and you can find not only for the learning management system consistency side of things, you'll actually find a spot there for all of today's topics throughout the entire day. And we ask that you contribute there, and let's make that into a resource that the whole state can use.